Well, let's dive in. So, my name is Dr. Kim. I am really excited to see everybody here talking about my very favorite thing, which is how to motivate people. So, let me tell you a little bit about how this session is going to go. I'm going to give a couple of quick intros to our panelists here. So, first of all, we've got Distracted, who is from Camp Playa Apology. Give us a wave there, D. The chief executive apologist, I should say. After that, we're going to hear from Amy Yin, who is the chief cat of the Infinite Love, the chief cat of Infinite Love, who is going to tell us a lot about how they run her camp. And then we also have Ian from Playa Alchemist, which is that big pyramid that you see over the 10 o'clock side. And so right now what we've got is a great panel of people from small, medium, and large camps, plus me, who is a organizational psychologist who loves to talk about motivation all day long. And so I'm going to give you a quick overview of the idea of motivation. Some people come in with knowing a lot about it from their leadership classes, other people are kind of fresh. So I'm going to give you just kind of a quick overview of how we like to talk about it in organizational psychology, so that you can, and then we'll plug everybody else in. And then, so there'll be a time for questions after each of their panel members gives their little talk about what they do in their camp to motivate people. And then there'll be a time for questions at the very end also. So when you have questions, just please type them into the chat. And between myself and B, who I forgot to introduce here, give us a wave, B, who's our technical person, will also will be able to get those questions and get them appropriately answered. Cool. All right, so let's get started. Here's what I want to tell you about motivation. So a lot of times when people talk about motivation, they're thinking about like how much energy and passion people bring. You say people are motivated or they're not motivated. Well, the fact is that all motivation is getting people to do a thing, to organize their actions in a single direction. So when we talk about herding cats, what we're really talking about is aligning people's actions. And so as we align people's actions, they can still be motivated by very different things as long as their actions are in alignment. So I found in my years of doing consulting with companies large and small, that, and also with running Burning Man camps, is that people are motivated by very different things. And this is the hardest thing for people to get their minds around, because we think that what motivates us or our reasoning for doing something is going to be the same as everybody else's reasoning. And that's just not true. And it doesn't have to be true either. So there's really three different theories of motivation. There's three different ways to get people, including yourself, to do the thing, whatever the thing is. So first of all, there's what we call the extrinsic ways. And extrinsic means external. So that means we are going to give people rewards for doing what we want. So obviously in the default world, this takes the term of money and power and things like that. But in Burning Man, it's more like we might set aside a DGS ticket for you, or it might be some other kind of transactional thing where you get a privilege or some status that maybe not everybody has. And so even though that's something that's really prevalent in default world, that's not really how volunteerism works. Most volunteer things, and Burning Man is no exception, run instead more on intrinsic motivation, where we're concerned about our internal worldview. We're doing things because it's meaningful to us, because it's fun, because we want to learn something new. We want to acquire some new skills, or we want to use the skills we have. And that those intrinsic, to get that flow state maybe, or to be part of doing something, a really cool purpose, is more what happens on a volunteer level. But there's a third one, the third kind of motivation that often gets lost here, that is actually really, really important at Burning Man. And we call that pro-social motivation. And that means that you're doing things just because they serve other people. We're doing things because people want it, because it will help people, because we can see the impact it's having on others. And that's a good part of Burning Man motivation, part of the reasons why people are here. So between those three things, there's three things rather: the external, the internal, and the pro-social. That pretty much all the camps will have different combinations of that. And I want to add a special fourth thing just for Burning Man. And that's because part of what makes the Burning Man magic is having shared adversity. So when talking about adversity, it could be coming from the weather, it could be from the long gate lines, it could be from any number of things. There's going to be all kinds of weird and bad stuff that happens, and that's part of the journey, and that's part of what makes this not Coachella. And I think it's really important for burners to remember that if you're making it too easy on people, if you're having, like when we complain about plug and play camps, for example, or if we're doing something where we are paving the way and getting rid of all of that adversity, we're really not going to have the Burning Man experience, and it won't be motivating in that same way. But on the other hand, if we have really way too much adversity and far more difficulties and problems and mess than people really want to deal with, then you're going to have the opposite problem of nobody ever wants to do this ever again. So what you really want to do as a leader is think about how much adversity people can really have, and get rid of the hangups and the little snags that you can, because you know there's going to be stuff coming at you that you had to have no preparation for, and that's part of the magic of Burning. So now that we talked about those three basic things, I think that as we go into our panels, we're going to find that people will plug into that in terms of the way they motivate their people. So for example, I'm thinking about, we have a variety of camps here who are like small, more people-oriented camps where you might be aligned with the purpose of serving people, or you might be doing things that are intrinsically interesting. We also have ones where you're building a large and incredible thing, and that might be something more extrinsic, where you could have the challenge and the pride of I did this, and the status of that I was part of this big thing as motivators. So as we go forward, we're going to hear about the different ways people are motivating. But before I finish here, I want to just say a quick word about how to demotivate burners, because most of motivation is the alignment of the task and the purpose of the project and the project for volunteers. But it's also very easy, but a lot of it is just failing to demotivate people. So don't get in the way, basically. So a quick hit, 3 things that demotivate burners. Nobody likes it when mom and dad are fighting. So if you're having a lot of internal squabbles on your leadership team, maybe those are things you want to put in the background and not out where all of your campers can see it, so that you can present a united front. Another thing that demotivates burners is, I know we all love our snark, but if there's a lot of, as part of the camp culture, making a lot of personalities, putting that front and center, snarking on the people who don't get it, that's going to be demotivating for people rather than motivating, because the people will assume that if we're talking bad about these people over here, that when we're gone, people are talking bad about us. And so it's important to, if you're making a strong culture, to not make it a negative culture where we're comparing us and them all the time. And then the third thing, and this is really the most common thing that I see in Burning Man areas, is if you want people to do your project, you have to tell them what you want them to do. And that sounds so obvious. And yet because Burning Man is such a do-ocracy, one of the things that tends to happen is we tend to say, here, come in and be part of this and just do whatever needs to be done. And that does not work very well. It is a great way to have people do things, but not the things you wanted. And so when you're thinking about how to get people involved, as much clarity and simplicity as you can get them so that they know what's expected of them and they know how to do it will allow them to have the basic problems nailed, so that when all those weird, unforeseeable problems come up, they'll have the mental bandwidth to work with that. So that's all I want to say about motivation to get us started. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce Distracted from Playa Apology. And let's have, Dee, why don't you come over here and talk a little bit about what you guys do at your camp?
Yeah, we deliver greeting cards, playa-friendly flowers, and singing sorrygrams. Our specialty is apologies. We have a number of parties and additional side hustles, as I like to call them, but the card service is our main gig. I oversee all the interactive, and then my co-lead does the build and logistics. As a tight-knit camp of 25-ish, with 2/3 returning burners every year, we're squarely in that intimate small camp category, as you can see. So we don't necessarily have some of the challenges and struggles of bigger camps when it comes to motivating campers for build, strikes, and shifts. Most of us know each other. So my focus today is going to be about thinking about and designing interactivity that is camper first, volunteer first, no chasing required, which may seem a bit counterintuitive, but that's sort of my methodology when it comes to motivation. So essentially it means programming our camp so that campers show up because they love what we do and because providing our service is really gratifying to them. Maybe somewhat obvious, but important to remember. It's also about designing shifts and builds that are reasonable and don't become chores. I personally don't want to chase people and try to convince them to do stuff all week on Playa. So the disclaimer here is that our main service is really pretty simple, and our camp simple systems might not work for a giant camp or art project with a million moving pieces. This is just the POV of one small camp TCO. So a little history to help frame my approach. My formative Burning Man years were spent at a beautiful but very sizable food camp, super ambitious build, daily cooking, cleaning, lots of chores. And I really felt like I had to sneak out all the time just to do what I wanted, and just racked with guilt all the time. It was definitely not a fit. This is not a diss to that camp. I love that camp, but it wasn't for me, and I needed a different experience. It led to the creation of my current camp, where leaving was really encouraged, and I didn't have to convince anyone to do stuff. And it turned out there was a bunch of like-minded burners out there that like doing business that way too. So anyway, this is how our main service works. Everyone does one dedicated 4-hour shift during the week in our Sorry Salon. That's taking orders for cards and flowers. That's Sue right there, taking an order, and helping folks craft their apologetic missives. When you're on shift, you're the boss. The only rule is be nice, patient, and empathetic as people spill their guts about their screw-ups on Playa, which can also be a lot of fun. The bulk of the work really is in the deliveries, which campers do on their own time across the course of the week. Basically, we take a delivery order, we throw it up on once it's processed and ready to go, we put it up on a big whiteboard. If the delivery is or if you're going to a party at, say, 3 and A, or visiting your friends at 3 and A, you take the deliveries going to 2 and B and D and C, and really all that you can carry, and disperse them as you see fit. The deliveries are really fun. They don't impinge too much on your burn. You discover cool new stuff along the way. You stop wherever you want for as long as you want. You walk into strange camps, meet interesting people, give them a card, sing them a song, receive hugs, and possibly enjoy a beer with some new friends. This is kind of all the stuff I and most of my campers really like about Burning Man anyway. The goal was really always to come up with a camp that didn't interfere too much with our campers' burns. It's a service where people find their niche, more or less. Some people love writing haikus and counseling folks, like Sue. Some can actually sing. That's not me, but some can have really good voices. They do a lot of the sorrygrams, like Cam and Danny. Some people, like myself, love not being in camp. I end up doing a lot of deliveries, and it just all gets done. Aside from the core service, we have a number of parties and workshops created and managed by individual campers based on their personal passions and skill sets: Latin music, juggling, yoga, playa fitness. In short, we try to provide a unique core service and these smaller, what I call micro interactivities that again don't impinge too much on people's burns, so they get to enjoy themselves across the course of the week. I think sometimes as TCOs, and I'm certainly guilty of this, we can get really married to like an artistic vision of the camp, the look, the perfection of the service, and we can forget that we're really, obviously, as Dr. Kim pointed out, we're relying on a volunteer a volunteer workforce that might not always be 100% down for everything you've come up with or the work required to complete it. I've done that so many times. There were years when I personally came up with interactivity that I thought was just so clever, so charming, only to find that once on Playa, no one wanted to fulfill those requirements, those services, including myself. So now I just really try to think every time we try to introduce some new facet to the camp, like what are people really going to be willing to do out there? And what will they be enthusiastic about? Because once you're out there, as we all know, you have a lot less control over everything. I guess that's sort of the nucleus of my my pitch, my presentation. The last point I want to make, and Dr. Kim referenced it, I mean, find a great co-lead who makes up for your deficiencies. I really hit the lottery on that one with my co-lead. His name is Hazmat. He does all the things I can't do or don't want to do. But more importantly, part and parcel of that, I found that harmony between the top tiers of leadership, at least publicly, is really, really key. And having those defined roles and deference to one another as appropriate is just essential. One of the best ways to utterly deflate, to kill camper motivation, would be conflict between leaders, whether it's about what to do with a challenging camper or just a huge build mistake. I think really being in sync keeps the troops going. So anyway, to sum up, as TCOs, human resources are our most precious assets. They make our dreams come true. Come up with a camp vision and interactivity that serves BRC at large, but that also serves your campers, whatever that means to you and to them. Vet for campers who really love and believe in your interactivity, because then they'll show up. No chasing required. Make room for individual passions, quirks, and strengths of your campers. Remember that we're on Playa, not for perfection, but connection, and be prepared to amend your vision and pivot when you miscalculate, and never blame your campers for your own overambitions and miscalculations. The last thing is get a rad co-lead, support each other, and present a unified front to your campers, particularly in difficult times. That's it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dee. I've got a couple questions for you. And audience, if you have questions for Dee, type them in the chat. This is a time we're going to ask him some pointed questions. So my first question is, Dee mentioned a couple of times about pivoting when things didn't work out so well. Could you tell a story about a time when you had an idea that didn't work out and how you pivoted?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just go back in time. The beginning of our camp, I had a vision that it would be completely unstructured, no shifts. Like you would just help people when they came in, and if no one was there, you were automatically closed. That certainly did not work out. That was a little too unstructured. So around year 3, we started having like a formal shift system, which I was always against because I was really just trying to keep it completely, devoid of any structure. We also did, like, when we first came on, like every single sorrygram that we sang to people across the Playa, like was handwritten, customized for that particular fuck up, that particular transgression. And then like on our form, you could like order a haiku, you could order a sonnet, and I found that like people don't want to write iambic pentameter after a few beers or in the heat, so it was a little bit, it was part of that over ambition. I was like, we can do this, we can do that. That'll be so cool. I'm going to show how smart we are. And we just sort of like little by little pared that down. I mean, I've just come up with, every year I try to come up with something new, and some of them just fail utterly because no one wants to deal with it. Or no one wants to deal with the aftermath of it. Like if there's some kind of fulfillment off Playa. So we just try to keep our mind on like what other people in our camp want to do and what me and my co-lead want to do. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
We've got a great question from Generator, Jenny. How can you talk about your no chasing approach?
Well, again, I mean, I as I said, we have two-thirds of our campers come back every year. I mean, we weren't always like that. We started off as 4 people, but at this point in time, it's a small enough camp where a lot of us know each other. We vet pretty rigorously, and everyone has a sponsor and they're friends of someone in the camp. So by the time they're coming in, they really know what they're signing up for. And I just, the interactivity is just literally designed to not kind of be too intrusive. We do good work. We do lots of work. We do a disproportionate amount of work for our size, I think, for the community, but it's just, that's why we don't have to chase. People like doing these deliveries. People like working one salon shift. People like working a workshop or clinic that they actually have come up with. They show up for that, and they're not expected to show up for my workshop necessarily in our camp. They don't have to. We just really try to not overschedule. And then, the few things that we ask of people, they just do. And again, this is because I know everyone in my camp personally. And by the time even the newbies have come in or virgins have come in, me and my co-lead we've been on a few Zooms with them. We've gotten to know them. So I feel like everyone just kind of like we all are sort of responsible to each other, if that, I'm not
Great.
sure if that, yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying with no chasing is that people show up and do it. And if they don't do it, you don't like chase them down and waggle your finger at them, for example.
I mean, there's nothing to be, if they're really awful, you don't invite them back, I guess. But these are some of my closest friends. So it's at this, and again, I have that luxury, which someone, some of the other camps we'll hear from may not have that luxury. We have simple systems and it's a small camp. There's no doubt about it.
Great. Okay, great. We've got a question about how much time is in meetings. I'm going to hold that one for the end so everybody can answer that. So now I think let's talk with our second person. Thank you so much, Dee. And let's talk a little bit with Amy, Chief Cat of Infinite Love. Why don't you come up here and tell us a little bit about what your camp strategy is?
Yeah, totally. So I'm the Chief Cat of Infinite Love. This will be my 3rd year going to Burning Man, 2nd time running this camp, and I've only camped with Infinite Love. We're a really tight-knit group of super type A burners. We're mainly based in the Bay Area, so it's a lot of product managers and engineers and people who love recreational logistics. I always say that if you love recreational logistics, you would love our camp. Ian talks about voluntary hardship. I talk about recreational logistics. So some more offerings. Our camp really centralizes a ton of offerings. It's a lot more coordination, but you get great economies of scale. Like we rent like a massive diesel generator. We provide a power grid, water. Every single meal is included for campers, and it's a really high. Like we have a steam shower. A steam room, a shower. We have an AC room with a beautiful stage that you can kind of see from this photo. So it's a very. We actually have a ton of offerings for how small our camp are. We're about 60-ish people. And I find that for us, like the coordination really brings us together. So I know one of the topics of this panel is like, how do we keep campers motivated? And for me, it's 3 things. It's community, really crisp agreements, and really leaning into duocracy. And so for us, like the main thing is like, I really filter people out. It's like, hey, do you want to be a part of a community? Do you want to like add like 59 new best friends to your life? And do you want to put in 40+ hours of volunteer work? So that's like the minimum requirement for all campers. We have this like very elaborate spreadsheet, which lists every single role of what has to get done. You get a certain number of points, and you have to sign up for a minimum of 45 points to be a participant of Infinite Love. And so one of the great advantages I see of that is that the work is really spread out. We have like a core leadership team. There's like 8 of us, and we meet every single week for an hour. But then there's actually a ton of work that gets done outside of the leadership team. And it's really, really inspiring. And it also means that I think that when Dr. Kim was talking about how there's like intrinsic, extrinsic, pro-social, I really see that people show up for their roles because intrinsically we look for roles that are fun for them. But there's a huge pro-social element because they've had the experience of someone doing things for them purely because they wanted to serve and create that experience for that person. And so we actually have really strong, expectation setting, and we find that people do actually do a good job of like staffing the roles that they do. We do have some like structure around that. So every day we have 2 mayors of the day. And so they get the fun experience of staying at camp all day, and they are in charge of making sure they flag down like the porta potty people, but then they also have a printed out version of the spreadsheets, and then they go and make sure that they're more there, not to police the roles, but just to like make sure that like the roles are getting done. And then we also kind of like actually have like a review and rating system for campers every year. So at the end of the burn, the leadership team gets together and we look at a spreadsheet of every single camper, and we actually have, like anonymously each leader ranks that camper's contribution, and then we kind of stack rank it, and then we see like, okay, who are like the top contributors. We have like celebrate them and kind of like do like a special dinner for them, and then the people at the bottom, we decide like, well, like were they not contributing for a good reason, and does that mean that they like maybe they're not the best fit for the camp and shouldn't be invited back for the next year. So yeah, we have like multiple different checkpoints for how we just make sure that like it's like a two-way thing. Like the camp accepts everyone, and then people should kind of accept the camp because they want the experience that we're providing, which is like kind of like a high effort but like tightly bonded, intimate experience.
Awesome. That's really cool. I want to dive into one thing that you were talking about. Can you talk a little bit about the downside of motivating people with the way you do with the point system, perhaps?
Totally. So the point system is great because it creates clarity. And the downside is people sometimes get really obsessed with points. An example I'll give is that we're doing a fundraiser tonight at the International Art Museum. And I reached out to every camper and I was like, hey, like, we got to like promote the tickets. Like every ticket we're selling, it like reduces like the dues for the camp. And it's going to be like this awesome party. And a few people asked me like, oh, should I like keep track of how many minutes I'm spending reaching out to people so I can get points? And I'm like, no, like we're just doing this because like it benefits the camp. And so not every single job has points. And sometimes people can be like, well, I did this thing, should I have points? Another point of contention was that people felt that last year they didn't get enough points for doing build because they're like, oh, well, we're like setting up the entire camp. Shouldn't this be worth more points? So there are like things where people feel like the points are like the points need to feel fair. Yeah. So Colin, the point system, 1 point is roughly 1 hour, but we scale that up or down based off a hardship. And so like 1 hour of strike is worth more than 1 point because no one wants to do strike. But then 1 hour of like build is actually worth less than 1 point because we can't, if we gave you points for every single hour you're at build, that would be too many points. And so it's not exactly roughly equal. We have a really easy time getting people for build, a much harder time wanting people to do strike because everyone's tired. They just, blew their brains out. All their neurotransmitters are dead. And so we have like a system where every camper must do 2 strike shifts, and the strike shifts all have like leads. And if they don't show up for their strike shifts, they lose their deposit. Do you have a document detailing your system for points? Well, we have the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet has instructions on it. I can show it if it's helpful because it's actually kind of a masterpiece. I'm like very happy about our spreadsheet, and it makes a really big difference that when people really show up. So I can pull that up.
Yeah, I think people would definitely want to hear about that. As the master spreadsheeter here, I think that there are probably a lot of things that you can share that people will be very interested in seeing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will pull that up. And then what's the second question? Oh, okay. And then
detailing more about the points and the strike deposit.
Yeah, so the strike deposit, in order to like kind of, we have like an application process. And so you apply and you indicate interest, infinite love. And then we have like these kind of like rolling orientation sessions. And then after you go to orientation session, you're kind of like, you get an email that says like what, like you've been accepted. And once you're getting accepted, you have to send a strike deposit. And so your deposit to be in the camp. And that's like what kind of like confirms that you are a member of Infinite Love and you are going with us this year. You can be a member of Infinite Love, but not camp with us because the community goes beyond that. And then so that strike deposit is held, and that's different from our cost sharing. We try not to call them dues because they're not dues because everyone's just paying for the cost of camp. So we're sharing all the centralized services that we're sharing at the camp. So that amount of money is separate from that $250 strike deposit.
Okay, so while so it's not dues because it's tied to exactly how much you spend, rather than
exactly like we
say, for example, $250 for everybody every year or something like that.
Well, $250 is the strike deposit, but then we have dues that are literally just how much money do we spend divided by number of campers. So
you do that later, or you do that earlier in the process?
We do that earlier. Because we need the money. We need cash flow.
Gonna say, yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is the spreadsheet. So I kind of try to put all of the links here, and so we have this like camp plan that kind of like documents all of like the different parts of camp. So the purpose is to convey key information about Infinite Love. So we talk about like the communication, we relink the things, we have a video of our leadership team, their contact information. We have a summary, like what is the gift of our playa, what kind of programming, what's it like to camp with us? Does Infinite Love mean more poly camp? Well, like no. And then what does Infinite Love mean to you? Community, qualifications, accountability, consent is a big thing, being part like the application process. Oh, we even have like a website now, which is pretty cool because you need one for tax status. We have like we have like this website, and then the website has like a join link, which takes you to the application form. And then you have like kind of like how do you get your stuff on the truck? Like what does that cost? Like all these different pieces of it. So that's kind of like the camp plan that we have. And then the spreadsheet is okay, so this is like an update we made this year, which is you have to have a CRM. Not having a CRM is like the way that everyone gets really upset. And so this is our CRM.
It's a CRM for, just to be clear, that's a.
What does CRM stand for? Let me think. CRM stands
Customer
for
relationship
customer relationship management. So sorry, it's the camper relationship management in our case. And so this is our camper like database. Not having this was the most miserable thing last year because we like had people fill out the application form, but not everyone who applies actually wants to camp with us. And so you have to put your name into here. And we said now it has to be real name, not playa name, because people got really confused with playa names. So you have to put your name here and your email. And then once you put your thing in here, now you're able to fill out this like sheet. So this like sheet lists every single like role here, who the council contact is. So we have like an 8-person leadership team. So who would you contact, what the description is, what the requirement is. And so this is the magical part. Let's say I'm like Sparkle Pony. I cannot sign up for this role. Sparkle Pony is not allowed because you have to be in the people tab. So this seems like a small validation, but it's actually a game changer because you can't have that random people signing up for roles anymore, or people who like have like a typo and like because now they actually add up all the points for you, and so the spreadsheet will automatically count all of the roles you signed up for and then add it for you, so you know if you've met your minimum point requirement. So that's yeah, I know it's a lot, but it's actually like awesome. Last week we did like a 6-hour working session as a council, just like making sure every single role is on there. But the upfront work really makes a big difference.
I want to be really clear. First of all, I applause for the recreational logistics for sure. But I want to be clear that this is not something that everybody has to do if this is not how you roll, but that this is a gorgeous example of what you can do if everybody is, is motivated to do it in that way. And to talk about creating clarity, very nice. So it's a question here. So if the strike deposit isn't needed to cover camp costs, what happens to the deposit from people who don't strike?
Oh, so those people lose their strike deposit. So every year we usually have maximum 1 or 2 people that do skip strike, and we keep the money, and then they're not welcome to camp with us again. So they kind of like lose membership in the community. Yeah,
that's good. Okay, great. Other questions? I'm looking here to see if I missed anybody. I think that the spreadsheet folks are loving the spreadsheet, so this is very good.
Silly question. What's strike? Strike is like when you so the build is when you like build the camp and like construct everything. Strike is when you like take off the nails and like pack everything back up and like leave no trace.
Do your moving, take everything down, pack it in the trucks. It's and traditionally it's kind of hard to motivate people for strike because everybody's exhausted and may not have any brain cells left and all the usual reasons.
Absolutely.
So so generally you have to think about this ahead of time, or else you will have no cats left to herd by the time strike rolls around.
That's right.
I'm going to hold the questions on that for later, and let's get into and Amy, thank you so much for showing that great the back end here of showing what you're working on. I really appreciate that. I think that's very useful for people. If you feel like sharing any of your spreadsheets with the group, I'm sure that people would hungrily eat that up.
And let's just so that you don't share your campers' personal information.
Oh yeah,
and I will ask them to remove that from the recording.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, great. Let's move on and talk a little bit with Ian from Playa Alchemist, who runs a very large camp, and there's a lot of cats to herd over there.
Yeah, there is. Hey, thanks, guys. Hey, my name's Ian, co-lead of Playa Alchemist. Crystal is the other, my partner in crime, making the thing happen every year. I want to talk about what a huge endeavor it is, a volunteer endeavor it is to build this camp, and hopefully put to the later rest almost the biggest misconception about our camp is people think that it must be built with professional labor. Trust me, it is not. It's quite the wild exercise to coordinate and herd this many cats. So a little bit about our camp build. She's probably bringing up the slides there. The pyramid itself is 3,000 stainless steel hubs. It's all custom fabrication, 800 cast hubs, 900 panels. And then we've got a team of probably about a core team of 30 people for just the pyramid build. And they got to put in probably 2,500 hours of work. And on the ground crew, that's another 20 people for the power grid and utilities grid. And then there's probably another 10 to 15 people that come in later in the week for the projection, sound, and audio. And then they donate a lot of their time during the burn for that. And then during the burn, we put up probably 20 hours a day of programming, workshops, and then live music in the pyramid at night and DJs outside. You know, that's our core programming team is another 4 to 8 people on shift at any given time. That's like the core leadership team. And then campers that don't build, we need at least 2 4-hour shifts from everyone just to make the camp function, you know, from the kitchen shifts, camp maintenance, and pyramid support. And that's another probably 1,000 hours. Yeah, because like in our volunteer signups, it's 1,000 hours of slot. And that's not including build. So altogether before, I think I totaled 5,000 to 6,000 hours of work to throw the camp, which is a huge endeavor, and 70 core build team. Give you a chance, like that's the size of what it takes. And I'm sure if we did this with all construction people, it would be done in half the time, but that's not our purpose. It's really to, you know, you don't need construction experience to join our build team. What you do need is you just really want to contribute and you have a mind for type 2 fun, which is, you know, if you love climbing mountains, which is grueling during the fact, and then afterwards, the feel goods from that, that's the people that we get on our build team. Yeah, so a little bit of the camp culture, kind of the word that we used is voluntary hardship. That's really what Burning Man is sort of about, but for us, we take it to all sorts of extremes. And what I do is I just frame it correctly that, you know, this is mundane, hard work. It's really tough, but if it's seen correctly through the right lens, it's really a practice in self-awareness. So what we do on our build team calls, what I talk about is, you know, difficult emotions are expected. And we go around and talk about, you know, there'll be days where you're really wanting to strangle the guy next to you. You're going to feel despair, shame, joy, you know, like all in one day. And because you're, you know, after 5 days of working 18 hours in this grueling heat, it does tricks to your brain. And so we talk about that. And so, you know, in the process, you know, this isn't our build, isn't just this grueling labor. We're not a bunch of Sherpas out there. They're whipped into like compliance. No, when we approach it with like, this is a true test of the self, to conduct oneself like in a real awesome manner. And then so, yeah, so most of the team, like last year, we didn't have very little conflict. And people know that when they hit this wall kicking moment or someone comes out with like, you know, being testy or short with others, we just know that they're going through a moment. And, you know, one big thing for volunteers, we noticed that everyone has like a different background and different skill set. And we prime people understanding not to be upset with someone if they're slow with doing something. Another thing, like if someone's on that pyramid, there's other guys that are of no problem working 18-hour days. And for you, this might be your first time doing hard labor. And no, you can't. And so just understand that you'll face that shame. You might project out and blame others while you're not working, but it's our job to help people through that. And Dr. Kim had some good background. You had some awesome background for like the theories of motivation. I talked about 3 big pillars of motivation, which I take responsibility to understand these aspects for everyone. It's an individual map. One big pillar is autonomy. Everyone needs a certain degree of freedom, too much, too little. And you got to find the right match for each person. It's an individual thing. Second big pillar is purpose. People have to be tied to the great big thing. So if you want, as a camp lead, want to motivate people, I personally spend a lot of time tying it to the big why. Like why I do this camp is like my personal, I feel like my better self comes out from it. I've had so much great opportunities from it. And my purpose is just to help others feel the same, right? And that's this big purpose, this big gnarly hard build. And if I'm infectious with that, and I know it kind of helps other people see that big purpose. And that third big pillar is mastery. It's people have to feel that they're getting good at something or they have a skill to learn. There's plenty of opportunity with our camp, all huge project. But even just like learning the small and mundane, we find like there's a lot of people on our team that have never done, like especially some people have never used tools before, and there's sort of like the shame without it. They're very engaged and want to do more. When we say it's okay to not, we'll teach you this, you're going to become an expert at the end, you get to learn this. That's really engaging for people to learn to do something new they haven't had to do before. And yeah, so that's like some of the tactics we use. Like you saw some of the photos, morning yoga, start work together, break together, and finish together. We do more self-organizing principles than you think. We're not rigid. It's a personal thing that I've learned is to let go of a lot of the prescriptive tasks. The autonomy granted to people is so much more worth it at the sacrifice of efficiency, but it's more about how we get there, right? Another thing I have learned over the years is consent to give instructions. Not rob someone of the autonomy to figure it out themselves. I ask if they need to. I don't tell them what to do unless they ask. Can't emphasize that more than enough. Yeah, and I blame myself more than others. I create that space where I've made the mistake first. If you don't know what to do, if you're lost or if someone's disorganized, that's my fault. And me being upfront about that really helps give people the safety to feel it's okay to not be perfect. And that kind of helps. That's kind of in the big motivation picture. So yeah, that's kind of my short spiel. I don't know how long that was, but yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to highlight a couple of things that you said in there. One of the things that I really like that you said was about that people are using this as a chance to learn and develop. And that's been one of the things that I found really consistent about Burning Man is that this is where people learn to use power tools or build something or do something completely different than what they've already done. And so as we talk about matching people with jobs, I think it's important to think about what people want to learn, not just what people are already good at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you a little bit more about the rules or some of the, maybe we call them rules, maybe we call them participation guidelines, but what are some of the guidelines for your build team, for example?
Ooh, for our team, number one hard rule is we run a dry build for obvious safety reasons, but it's so much more worth it. It keeps energy, one of the guidelines we say we manage energy and focus on what makes us reach these states of flow. And responsibilities that we have for the team, say it's your responsibility to communicate your needs. Don't expect other people to understand. You're an individual. Yet at the same point, don't assume that you're your needs are unique, it's more likely other people are feeling the same thing. Be brave and speak up. If you're unable to, basically don't ghost out. It's your response, right? It's your responsibility. It's okay if you can't be out there full time, but don't ghost out. Self-care doesn't mean ghosting out. So that responsibility to communicate to your small core team, those are agreements that we make in advance. And then that really helps the little small team dynamic. And that kind of alleviated most of the issues on teams. It's really like people not having the same desire for how long to work or when to take breaks. That's probably the cause of most conflict. So, yeah.
Great.
Any
Can
other
you say a
questions?
little? Yeah, can you say a little bit about the motivation methods that you have tried that have not worked?
Oh, I used to, when I came in there with like my default world mindset, I was like hard expectations. Now I'm way more like just, it's an honest invitation to collaborate. I don't have an expectation for people to do words. I really honestly open an invite. It's hard to say, like, say, guys, if people aren't stepping up to do something, I mean, I'll personally do it, but I don't expect, make sure it's always an invitation and approach that mindset and that someone's voluntary effort, they have to want to do it. Coming in saying you're expected to do this much work during build, it doesn't work. We use that internal metric of success, which is if you're proud of your own level of effort, that's what matters, right? Stop blaming other people about why you're not working or you haven't received clear instructions or they're disorganized or whatnot. So what works is ask someone if you're proud of your effort. What doesn't work is telling them if you're expected to be out there all the time during the day or whatnot. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's great to figure out how, I mean, it's kind of the main tension in all of this is to figure out how to allow for the autonomy for people to have the burn they want to have and to yet do the things that need doing. So that's something that I think we all end up as camp leads having to think about. Thanks.
Questions from the chat?
Yeah, I'm not seeing a specific question for you. So what I want to do is actually go to bring everybody back at this point, and let's get some team questions here that maybe everybody can talk about. And so I'm going to have to duck out in a second. I'm going to throw the questioning baton to David, but I'm going to ask everybody a question and then I'm going to head out. So what I'd like to hear just a little bit about how you all do meetings. How do you organize meetings before the playa, on the playa, and then if you have them after the playa? Okay.
So
who
for
wants to go
us,
first?
I can talk. So for us, we have a weekly 1-hour leadership meeting that started in December, and then we have camp calls like about once every 1 to 2 months, and we record them so people can get the information. And then we do a ton of stuff async because we have Slack and email and like WhatsApp. So we don't have that many all camp calls. But once we're on playa, every night we do this like a very elaborate dinner every night through like we have like meal pods. And so we do camp announcements. And it's actually really beautiful because people kind of use that as the turning of the day where they change out of their daytime outfits and into their evening outfits, and everyone gathers. It's a pretty strong showing every night. And then we do camp announcements. We talk about MOOP almost every single day. And we talk and people coordinate and like make plans for the evening. So that's been really good for like on playa.
David, do you have meetings?
We do have meetings. We have less than Amy has, but I mean, on playa, it's pretty like we have our sort of opening salvo to get everyone pumped up before it's on Sunday. It's like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before our first event, which is Sunday night, basically to talk about new interactivity, new services, and maybe new amenities to the living space, how to turn on the lights and just simple stuff like that. Most of us know this stuff because we've been together for, 10 years now, but it's just the overview of everything to watch for. You know, last year our water started leaking and didn't use the pump properly. I'm sure we'll spend about 15 minutes on that next year, but it's about 2 hours. And then we, last year we had another 20-minute meeting because we had a COVID case in our camp, a couple. So that required 20, 30 minutes of how to deal with that. And then we always do one, we have a big party on Saturday. So we kind of pregame about how to deal with that. For us, that's like 400 people, which is huge for us. So we're like, we have to assign roles and stuff. And the last one is usually that's when we also do our sort of pre-strike discussion about how we're going to deal with the Sunday and Monday. We don't really strike the camp till Monday, but that takes like another hour. So it's not a lot of on playa meetings. Off playa, we do the leads meet we Zoom pretty much every other week, starting, I guess, in January. Those may become more frequent as needed. And then we have one big camp Zoom. We have not found even 25 people on the Zoom is super helpful. What we actually do is we sort of have three. We have people in San Francisco, people in Arizona, and then we have LA. And there's a camp leader in each sort of segment in each of those cities. They kind of disseminate information. And we only have like 25, 26 people. So the information definitely gets out that way. And that's how we do it. Yeah. Ian, you?
Ridiculous amount of meetings, but I would say in the context of volunteerism, I think that it's more around inspiring others. I let go of default, like being too prescriptive. And every year I'm like, it's a blank slate. What for the alumni that want to come back and really want to maybe step up, I have to practice letting go of prescribing and saying how things should be run and let some people suggest and run with it, because ultimately there's never a good equation. And if I'm too prescriptive of how things should be run or how they should be taught, that just demotivates. And we've got a lot of high performers in our camp and team, and I've got to step back and like to say, hey guys, if you want to run meetings or organize or structure things differently, just please have at her. We've done every year is a slightly different way of doing meetings. And so that's kind of the FOSSI I kind of bring, but yeah.
Cool. I mean, we could take it. Does anyone in the audience have any other, or that's listening in, does anyone have any questions? This would be a great time if you did.
Anyone actually there, or maybe there's phantom participants. They're bots. They're bots to make us. They're bots being more put in, so we don't feel like we're just talking to no one.
We have time for. We definitely have time for some questions. Let's see.
Oh, we got an AI bot there. That's
we got a bot. Okay, from Meow. Okay.
We can talk about anything we want, really.
Here's an interesting question. Do all three of you have strike deposits? We don't. We avoid. We just honestly, we don't use money in any way as incentive. It's just not part of our camp culture. So we don't do that. I guess we take mental notes if people don't show up. Everyone shows up for build or strike. Most people still show up for strike. We have like 90% of the people there for strike.
I mean, how do you manage it? Like strike for us, like there's so many people, and like it's Monday, Tuesday, we're there on Friday, but not everyone. Yeah. Right. And I wouldn't know how to manage strike deposits. There's always reasons people need to leave a day early or half a day early. And it's not, you don't want to penalize them because of some other reason. We've battled that one, right?
We do penalize people that leave before strike.
But like, what if someone has to leave a day early because they're right off playa and something happens?
Strike starts on Saturday. Like they could do a strike shift on Saturday and on Sunday. They don't have to stay there Monday, Tuesday. So we opened up strike stuff on Saturday specifically so people could leave early. But like, it's like strike is so hard that it's totally unacceptable to not do strike, at least for us.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really hard just think after 5 days of it out there, no one wants to be there.
We have another question here. I like this one. What are some of the bigger struggles you found in motivating campers? Ian, you want to start?
Well, because we have such a big camp, I think one of them is just a culture, getting people to tune in enough to tune in and trusting some of like the RV leads or pods of friends to disseminate knowledge. That's a acculturation, really getting enough people to dial in. There's enough new people every year. Well, probably less new people this year, but just to pay attention to get on any one of our calls. So, you know, in the lead up, or at least be there for our family. We have family dinner every night. But again, people cycle through over the course of an hour and a half. So during announcements, not everyone's there. So that's just the big challenge, just to get communicate with everyone.
How about you?
Yeah, I think for us, the question was like, what are some struggles that we've had? Like infinite love is not for everyone, and some people really want to like have like a more relaxed experience, and sometimes like the campers don't sign up for roles pre-playa, and then they're like frustrated that they have 40 hours of volunteering to do on playa. I'm like, well, that's a horrible experience too for them, and so it's probably not the right experience if they can't do any work before playa, and then they're not happy about having to do 40 hours of work during playa. So I think that's like been the thing that's like turned off the most campers. Is like they're like, hey, 40 hours is a lot of time. And if you do 40 hours over 8 months, it's really not very much at all. And like the kind of 40 hours spent like getting to know your community, meeting people. We have like fundraisers, like events, like there's so much stuff that can be done like ahead of time. So I don't think that it's, so I think the key, like, like actually one of the things I learned, I remember my first year at Burning Man, I went with Infinite Love. And I was like, I can't believe there's all these people who are like not doing anything for Burning Man. Like the whole point of Burning Man is like participation, and they're just like kind of like showing up. Like, what the heck? And then I kind of like realized after year 2, I was like, oh, there's so many different ways to burn, and it was like I was being super judgmental, and about like how you can like burn well. And there's like so many different like ways to do it, and you know, I'm sure there's going to be a year at some point in the future where I want to just have like a chill burn. One of the reasons I actually took over the camp is because our camp leader has been running this camp for 5 years, and he decided he needed a break. So this year he's just going to like pre-camp. And I was like, that's like such an acceptable way to burn. So it's really about like finding the camp that like matches like the vibe.
Yeah, what we say is it's more an invitation. It's not your wrong burn. Invite. The more you participate, you feel the magic. Come participate, you feel that pride of ownership in the camp when you come build for so long and you gel together. It just amplifies the burn, right? All our build teams say the build is as equally important as the burn itself. It's such a positive impact, right? So you can get involved, trust me, right? That's an invitation always, though, not an expectation, right?
Yep.
Totally.
I would say my biggest struggles always come from, it's only happened it happened in the early years because neither me or my co-lead knew what we were doing. But at this point, the only real struggles come when we improperly vet. We've had a few campers, and in a tiny little camp, honestly, 1 or 2 sort of misfits can really change the dynamic pretty quickly. So I'll just put that on me and Mike, I'll just put it on me actually. So like, that's my fault, like just not, you know, seeing like some bright and shiny thing about a camper. I was like, oh yeah, they'll be great. And not really realizing they're just not going to fit in. They're not going to do what they're supposed to do. So that's been my biggest struggle. You know, occasionally you just sort of miscast. So I've had that issue. And then I think the same thing with some of the interactivities, like our campers can do whatever they want. And it used to be pretty unfettered. Like, sure, you're really passionate about doing this weird thing. And then I started getting a little more involved, because when no one shows up for a workshop or clinic that someone thought was so awesome, even though I knew no one was going to show up, they feel bad. So I try to talk to people about like, do you really want, or sometimes people didn't want to show up for their own workshops and clinics. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. It's like, so I think I got a little more, I mean, as you can tell, my camp's a little less structured than Ian's and Amy's, but I just got a little more involved. It's like, let's really talk about whether you want to do a dance party in the heat of the day without a shade structure. Let's discuss that and see if that's really what you want to do, or do you really want to do this kind of thing that will eat into this part of your day? So anyway, those have been some of my struggles. Let's see what other questions we have here.
One of the questions was, is there any special way you integrate the build team with the campers that show up at open? Maybe that'd be a good one for you. I also have an answer to you.
Well, I've got some. One way is just we make all campers show up by Tuesday, and then that helps.
Build
just like,
or a bird?
No, just a bird, right? Like all campers, like for a big camp, we had 280 last year, right? It's tough. We say, but hard rule. We no weekend warriors. right? And it just helps give the time so we don't have people that are like this siloed effect, right?
That's great. So for us, we do a really big opening ceremony, and so basically people like line up, and you kind of like do this like very intense like eye staring thing with every single person at the camp. Like you basically have like one person like move, and so you somehow get paired up with every single other person in the camp, and like we kind of like do like affirmations and this activity. And a lot of people, we did like a post camp survey, said it was like their favorite part of all of Burning Man. And so that like having some sort of like opening ceremony is like, it's really, really great because a lot of people are showing up and they feel like they don't know anyone. And so then at that point, at least they've seen the pupils of every person on camp in the camp.
Yeah. We are opening. Oh, sorry. Did someone have another question here? I was just going to answer really quickly. We have our opening night event it's kind of a soft open for the camp. And that's when we sort of bond together after our build is done. But most of the people in my camp have actually, there's no integration of build and campers because most people are in by Saturday, not even usually by Saturday, because a lot of people take the burner bus. Like almost all our camp takes the burner bus in. So they're in for that last stage of the build on Saturday. The only vehicles really we allow are like, if you're coming to build. So it's again, less of an issue because we're a smaller camp. What's your population on Monday and Tuesday? Obviously you can have 100 people there on Tuesday morning. That's for you guys, not me.
We had 24 people for build. And then we had 63 campers total last year. So about 50% of the people were there by Sunday. And then by like Monday, it was probably like 50-ish campers. And by Tuesday, it was 60. And I think we only had like 1 or 2 people show up Wednesday or later. I think we had like two people show up Wednesday or later. We don't explicitly not allow weekend warriors, but it is so much work to be in our camp. It'd be kind of crazy if you just came for the weekend. I think, yeah, we don't have like a policy against weekend warriors because they still have to do their minimum 40 hours contribution, whether or not they're showing up for 1 day or 7 days. You might as well get your 7 days worth.
Yeah.
Good point.
It's no less camp share cost, right?
Yeah, exactly. The costs don't change, like the effort doesn't change. So yeah, we might as well just come for longer.
Yeah.
And then in terms of running the ceremony, the camp leader runs the ceremony. Like it's chaos if you let more than one person run the ceremony. We have like a microphone, like there's like an activity and everything. So it's great.
Yeah. Colin was asking how many people stay for strike. For us, well, day one, it's over 100. For the first 2 days, then it dwindles down to this year, gradually dwindles down to 15 to 18 by Friday. That was a lot.
For us, by Tuesday, I think there were 12 people left by the Tuesday after the burn. So everyone does strike, but like the people who kind of stayed until Tuesday were honestly the smartest people because there was no traffic. I was one of the people left on Sunday after doing my strike shifts and that sat in like 16 hours of traffic. And so I was like,
I can't believe you guys did that. Like all the years past in my camp now, it's like I come in, no lineup, there's nothing. And when I leave, there's absolutely, the city's empty. I had to get to the airport during strike this year. Like I couldn't believe it. The lineups in the city. I totally forgot. I don't get to.
Totally.
Wow.
Okay, Connor asked, how do you decide the size of your camp and when or how to add new people? This is the thing that we always struggle with every year because me as the camp leader, I want more people because then the dues base or like cost sharing base is higher. So it reduces the dues per person, but then everyone else wants it to be smaller because they want to keep it intimate. But luckily I'm in charge. So the camp size is growing.
Nice.
Only slightly, like by a few people, but yeah, every year we're trying to grow by like 5 people. The thing is, there's kind of like step ups in infrastructure that happen. The biggest step up that happened for us last year is like instead of doing like smaller generators, we decided to get the big like diesel generator, and that rental alone is like $12,000. And so you have to have enough people to justify spending that much on just the generator cost alone. So there's kind of like these step functions that happen with camp size.
Yeah. I just keep it small. That's what I like. I found 50 and 60 was too much for me. So I think the highest, one year we went to 29 and it felt different. And so we try to keep it to 25, 26. And it actually just works out. Every year there's a few virgins. We have about 15% virgins every year, 20% virgins. Every year someone brings a new person into the camp. There's always some new energy in the camp, but for the most part, the same people come back and we only have so much space. Yeah, so that's my sweet spot, 26, 25.
For us, like, it's big dollars, right? To pay all trucking and everything. And so we want to maximize, keep fees as low as possible. So I'm plotting out how many RVs and tents we could do and make it tight and packed, but still have enough public space. That's sort of the balance that we have to find. So, yeah.
Are you going to grow your camp this year, Ian?
Are we going to what?
Are you going to grow the camp? Make the same
No.
size?
We're not going to do the corner again. Do you see that MOOP score? Too much work. We'll be back to the 2019 size, which is still big. A 250 by 450 is what we requested. So camp population probably 180, 200.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
that makes sense.
We have a new message.
Still, we're still building the same amount. So,
Sean is asking about your camp fees.
The fees.
ha,
Ours is 250. Ours are just 250. It includes, we don't have a meal plan, which is by design. Like you might imagine, our camp wouldn't have one, but we have a Porto that was mandatory 1 year. Most of the camps said they wouldn't come back unless we got a Porto. It was that very bad Porto year. So we have a Porto. We bring in water, but really more for like for eco reasons, like all that plastic. But we have water. We get a gray water pump out, so that covers that. And then literally we make, the storage and the transpo of the main infrastructure is literally the bulk of our cost. We don't have a shipping container. So this stuff is coming from Arizona. And so we have 2 box trucks, and that's literally, my co-lead now has part ownership in a warehouse. So we don't have those storage fees, but like it used to be almost the entire camp fee was just storing it somewhere. Now it's mostly the transpo in those box trucks, and obviously gas has gone up and everything. But so that's what the 250 covers.
yeah.
Our cost sharing is way higher than that.
Yeah, just to put the scale, so just the trucking for our camp is probably about $40,000, right? To rent the laser projectors, because you got to be rented with these. We don't own them, but we rent them. Just to rent them is a lot of money. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so just our heavy equipment, the manlift forklifts and the scissor lifts. Just that was $80,000 to rent last year. Just rent and truck them to Playa. Just give you an idea of the scale there. So you can start doing the math. Power grid's on par with what other people do, because we just rent. There's no hidden installation service. We do it ourselves, but it's about $750 per RV. Ends up being
A couple minutes left, and just back to like volunteerism, and this last question I think fits. What is your system for integrating new campers? Maybe target that a little more towards.
All our new
Into the
campers are,
volunteer.
sorry. I was just going to say, our campers are all recommended and sponsored by a trusted returning camper, usually more than just 1 year, but someone that we all believe will bring in, a good person. They're vetted via interview by the 2 co-leads. And then we just do a series. If they've never been before, we have a more rigorous program. We literally have some guy we call the onboarding specialist, and he just sends them an array of emails and makes sure they know what to expect and talks to them regularly, answers all the questions. But again, they have that one person that's ultimately responsible for them. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, so we try and do like a monthly camp event. And then we have the role spreadsheet so they can start getting themselves involved. Like what I kind of say is, hey, we're like not a sorority, we're not a frat. There's no like rush process. Like if you show up and you're part of the community, then you're part of Infinite Love. And so even though like there's kind of like this like email you get that says you're accepted, like the acceptance really like, have you been showing up? Are you participating? And then we try and do like regular events. We have these like weekly, bi-weekly calls where new campers can do like this orientation to understand what Infinite Love is and how to get involved. And then people like hang out a bunch. So this year we're probably going to be like 50% returning campers, so it'll be 50% new people. And then we have like a Virgin support program where there's like content for virgins about like how to get ready for Burning Man, and then every virgin is paired with a experienced camper so that you can ask their questions like how many batteries do I need, like how many outfits, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Ian, real quick.
I let Crystal crack the whip for all the new campers. That's what she handles. We did start last year having more scheduled, like a slide deck for acculturation, but it's a effort. It's work in progress every year because we've always focused on trying to just be successful, just getting the thing built, and just new campers. It's sort of to say it's a work in progress every year. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's about wraps us up. Anything else, David?
No, I mean, I think that's about it. I don't know if any Ian or Amy, if is there a way people can contact you if they want to ask more questions?
Yeah, Ian at playalchemist.com, especially if anyone has any technical details, like if they want to start trying to figure out their own power grid, need help designing it or something like that, or something around the cost, big logistics stuff, just let me know. Ian at playalchemist.com, if you do it.
Yeah, we're infinitelovecamp.com, and then there's a contact button there.
Yeah, mine is www.playapology.com, and there's a contact button that'll get to me if anyone has any questions. Thank you all for attending and for being lovely attendees, and the questions are great. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks all. This is super fun.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, panelists.